A single landing slot at Zurich is now more competitive than a Harvard application. Today, we're tearing down the logistics behind one of the most intense aviation pressure cookers on the entire planet, the World Economic Forum in Davos 2026. Every single January, this event compresses just way too many variables, weather, security, and massive VIP expectations into an incredibly tight space. And let me tell you, the operational reality is brutal. When you see just how fiercely competitive those landing slots actually are, the ultimate luxury of flying private, which is, absolute flexibility, completely shatters. If you're a dispatcher or a crew member planning a mission between January 13th and January 29th, normal winter logic just no longer applies. Okay, let's dive right into this. We'll be deconstructing this massive system stress test across 6 areas: the Davos traffic surge, the airspace lockdown, the Zurich choke point, when alternates disappear, the true cost breakdown, and surviving the final mile. Starting with Section 1, the Davos traffic surge, saturated margins. So, 170%. That is how much private jet arrivals spike above your typical winter levels during the World Economic Forum. Let me just be blunt with you here. Davos isn't just busy. Busy still has margins. Busy means you can adapt and adjust on the fly. Davos, it is entirely, literally saturated. To put that 170% surge into perspective, we're talking about Zurich seeing days with more than 50 private jet arrivals. You've got over 300 of these jets arriving just during the core forum days alone. And when you tally up the business jets, state aircraft, and helicopters, authorities are estimating around 1,000 total additional movements. This right here is exactly why parking becomes this fiercely competitive game you have to play 6 to 12 months in advance. At WEF, strict discipline matters way more than creativity. Moving on to Section 2, the airspace lockdown, zero improvisation. This brilliantly illustrates where the whole environment totally shifts from just busy commercial aviation to basically militaristic precision. Swiss authorities drop down this reinforced protected zone with a 25 nautical mile radius, that's about 47 kilometers, right over the center of Davos. And this completely removes any room for interpretation. Flights absolutely need prior authorization. Any routing changes, they attract immediate attention. Late documentation, it gets noticed, and fast. There is zero tolerance for improvisation. Kevin Singh, an active global captain with over 30 years of experience and the founder of ICAR's Jet, hit the nail on the head. He says, if anyone is still treating this as a winter operation with extra paperwork, that is where trouble starts. You really have to contrast this reality with the usual expectation of super flexible, on-demand private travel. It's a whole different beast. Section 3, the Zurich choke point, the 120-minute limit. Zurich is really the exact pressure point where Davos logistics either hold together or totally unravel. Normally, you're used to flexible departures, right? Well, during WEF, you are looking at a brutal, strict 120-minute drop-and-go window. Now sure, on paper, 2 hours on the ground sounds workable. But picture this. 3 arrivals land within minutes of each other, and they all suddenly need de-icing. That theoretical 2-hour window, it stretches and breaks instantly, creating a massive domino effect of backlogs. And the physical space constraints are just as unforgiving. If your aircraft has a wingspan over roughly 17 meters and you arrive in the morning without approved parking, you're getting pushed out. Sometimes quietly, sometimes not. You absolutely cannot just sit on the tarmac and pray for a cancellation to magically free up some space for you. It just doesn't happen. Which brings us to Section 4. When alternates disappear, the safety net vanishes. So you might be thinking, if Zurich is full, we'll just pop over to a backup airport, right? No way. Let's look at how this builds into a compounding logistical nightmare. These overflow airports, they aren't pressure valves. They are entirely separate systems with their own severe constraints. Take Geneva, for example. It requires a mandatory prior permission required, or PPR. That means just filing a flight plan isn't enough. You need confirmed parking. You can't even list Geneva as a fallback alternate without specific authorization first. Meanwhile, Dumbendorf operates under strict movement controls, and St. Gallen requires some wildly complex customs and weather planning. So that comforting illusion of a quick fallback plan is totally shattered. Zurich basically stops acting as a safety net entirely. Section 5. The true cost breakdown, leaning high. If you are running operations during WEF week, average costs simply do not apply. Let's break this down. A standard handling fee during the forum runs you roughly 2,213 Swiss francs. Add to that a specific WEF administrative surcharge of 350 francs. Then factor in de-icing. That's about 1,195 francs per event, and you might need multiple rounds of it depending on the weather. Add it all up, and your baseline estimated total per movement comes to a staggering 3,758 Swiss francs. And remember, that entirely excludes the cost of parking, fuel, catering, and transport. So the crucial point here is how heavy handling fees and de-icing make up this massive baseline cost of almost 4,000 francs just to touch down and take off again. Sure, the exact numbers fluctuate, but the pattern definitely does not. If you're heading to Davos, you absolutely have to lean your budget high. All right, final stretch, Section 6, surviving the final mile, where schedules unravel. Because landing the plane is really only half the battle. A standard winter transfer by road from Zurich up to Davos usually takes about 90 to 120 minutes. But during WEF, with all the extra congestion and security checkpoints, these road timelines stretch dangerously. A one-way private ground transfer will run you around 1,200 Swiss francs. But honestly, it's the time cost that really kills schedules. This makes helicopters a primary, absolutely necessary logistics plan, not just a fun backup. And that's assuming you've got your early coordination inside that restricted airspace fully locked in. When you don't lock things in, you're setting yourself up for a complete cascade of failures. Look, problems during Davos rarely stem from just one single thing going wrong. They come from a whole series of optimistic assumptions, assuming your alternate airport will accept you, assuming parking might just magically open up later in the day, assuming the de-icing queue will move fast or that ground transport will somehow absorb your delays. These assumptions compound incredibly fast, and they lead straight to a total logistical collapse. To summarize the core thesis of this explainer, we really have to look back to the operational experts. And they say Davos punishes optimistic planning. Conservative, locked-in plans perform better, even if they feel inflexible. This is your ultimate takeaway. If you're bringing a large cabin aircraft, you literally must lock your plans in 6 to 12 months in advance. Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen the 170% traffic surge, the 25 nautical mile lockdown, those unforgiving 120-minute ground limits, and the disappearing safety nets. So, with airspace locked down and logistics stretched to their absolute physical limits, what happens when the infrastructure simply can't expand any further for the world's elite? It's a fascinating problem. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep your plans locked in, and I'll catch you next time.